The Boeing 787, sold as a Dreamliner.
An all-new airplane in a once-in-a-decade, if not once-in-a-generation, achievement of human ingenuity.
For airlines, it's cheap to fly. For passengers, it offers unparalleled comfort.
Wow.
For Boeing, it promised windfall profits.
The Dreamliner is the plane of the future.
But Al Jazeera discovers a dark side to the Dreamliner.
Unimaginable that we could be 3 years late, have a fleet grounding, have fires on the airplane.
Our investigation finds Boeing altered its own quality standards.
They're shortchanging the engineering process to meet a schedule.
We uncover a whistleblower fired as he fought for safety.
There's no doubt there's bad repairs going out the door on the 787.
We go behind closed doors onto the factory floor to reveal a world Boeing keeps secret.
I want to fly one of these planes because I see the quality going down around here.
January 16th, 2013, Takamatsu, Japan. A brand new Boeing 787 Dreamliner makes an emergency landing. Passengers knew the plane was in trouble.
で同時に、外を見てみるとエンジンあたりから白い煙が見えたんで、もう
思ったんですけど、非常にプラスチックの焼ける強い匂いが、漂ってきて、このまま墜落してしまうのかなとも一瞬は思いましたが。
実際に見ますと、青いボックスが、膨張した形で見分しました。
The blue box was one of the Dreamliner's 2 lithium-ion batteries, the most powerful and risky ever permitted on a commercial aircraft.
It's just the latest in a string of embarrassments for Boeing's state-of-the-art aircraft.
9 days earlier, a Dreamliner battery had caught fire in Boston, Massachusetts. 2 battery failures in less than 2 weeks.
Japanese carriers, all Nippon Airways and Japan Airlines, have grounded their fleets of Boeing 787 Dreamliners.
Japan Airlines and ANA had been the first to fly the Dreamliner. Now they became the first to cancel all flights.
Breaking news. The United States Federal Aviation Authority...
Within 24 hours, the U.S. safety regulator, the Federal Aviation Administration, grounded the 787.
All 50 of the new Boeing 787 Dreamliners have now been grounded.
The rest of the world followed. No Boeing fleet had ever been forced from service. But on January 17th, 2013, the dream was over. I'm Will Jordan. For a year, my team and I have been investigating the Dreamliner. It's the Boeing company's big bet on the future. A plane created to save fuel, improve comfort, and boost profits. Built in a new way, designed and manufactured by scores of companies around the globe. The company that makes the battery is GS Yuasa, based in Kyoto. We wanted them to tell us what had gone so wrong. Hi, how are you?
会社名とか
Al Jazeera.
アルジャジーラ
Yeah. We wondered whether you might be willing to do an interview. They refused.
We have a contract with the Boeing, so we can't tell any comments to you.
The battery is only one part of the Dreamliner's complex electrical system. There's also a charger made at a factory thousands of kilometers away. What happened there shows Boeing learnt years ago just how dangerous a lithium-ion battery could be. In Tucson, Arizona, we tracked down Michael Leon, an electrical technician.
I've been working electronics since I was 17 years old, and I joined the paratroopers and was assigned to an electronic communications battalion of the 82nd Airborne. Yeah, this is the first time I've been here since 2007. It's hard to believe that this is what's left of a 3-story engineering structure.
On a November morning in 2006, Leon and dozens of other workers clocked in at Securaplane, the company that makes the battery charger.
And I started a pot of coffee, then I went into my lab and started working on my battery charging unit.
And then it happened.
And it was a very loud explosion. And all of a sudden, I was lying on the floor, and there it was, coming out the side of this battery. It was about that big, and it wasn't like fire. It looked like a jet afterburner, like jet exhaust.
The prototype battery Securaplane was using to test its charger had exploded.
I heard a very loud series of metallic rattling bangs. There was kind of a shh, and just this jet of steam.
The fire was literally rolling up the walls around me, and on the ceiling. I could just see it eating up all around me.
I know that if that happened on board an aircraft, there would be no chance of survival.
It was the biggest chemical fire in Tucson's history. A 10,000 square foot, 3-story structure burnt to the ground.
After my building burned down, after that, they realized very emphatically the danger of this chemistry.
Richard Luxo knows well the chemistry of the Dreamliner battery. Boeing chose the most powerful there is, but also the most volatile.
They went to lithium cobalt, which is way up here as far as danger.
Luxo stepped down as Securaplane president just before the fire. He started a new company to make lithium-ion batteries for business jets. Luxo was a true believer in the technology. Then he began testing.
2 3.3 amp hour series battery pack bullet test.
Luxo went beyond even the latest industry guidelines, going so far as to fire bullets into batteries to see if they could be made safe for military applications.
Yeah, you can run the tests that you feel that you need to meet the requirements to be safe, but you also need to have a conscience that's going to tell you, I want to do the extreme.
In the end, testing with a conscience, Luxo couldn't make the batteries meet the requirements. His new company failed.
We became proficient in destroying batteries. And the more we learned about it, the worse it got. I mean, oh my God, we kept digging and digging. And we were saying, I wonder what the rest of the guys are doing. Well, I guess we knew.
By the rest of the guys, he means Boeing. And they were testing to a weaker standard, one written by the FAA specifically for the Dreamliner. It's the FAA's job to regulate air safety. But when it comes to building airplanes, the FAA delegates oversight almost completely to the aircraft manufacturers. When it comes to the battery and beyond, Boeing largely polices itself. The batteries passed Boeing's tests. In line with the FAA rules, Boeing said the 787 batteries would virtually never catch fire on board an aircraft. Then they failed twice in just 9 days. Boeing has not uncovered the root cause of the failures. It found a workaround, a strong steel case, more insulation, and an exhaust for noxious fumes.
Any fire will be impossible because there's not enough oxygen to support combustion.
But several leading scientists have their doubts.
I don't think it's a sufficient fix. Even inside that steel box with all of its fortifications, all the elements are still there for fire.
Despite not knowing the root cause, America's safety regulator, the FAA, was satisfied. And in April 2013, the Dreamliner was back. But this story goes far beyond a burning battery. It begins at Boeing itself.
This is it. The first American commercial jet capable of economical transatlantic service. The Boeing 707 Jet Clipper.
Since its creation in Seattle nearly a century ago, Boeing had developed a reputation as a world-class engineering company. But in 1997, Boeing changed. It merged with competitor McDonnell Douglas. Two companies with two very different business models.
The merger was all about transforming our successful culture and business model into the same business model that McDonnell Douglas had used unsuccessfully.
You basically shortchange engineering, you stop doing aggressive new product developments, you run the business for cash.
The new Boeing moved its headquarters from Seattle, the only home the company had ever known, to Chicago. It began slashing investment in research in order to cut costs and maximize Wall Street returns.
I felt it was wrong. I felt it was going to take the company in the wrong direction, and I thought that quality would suffer and the integrity of the product would suffer.
I feel that that legacy and that history and that competence has been hijacked by a bunch of corporate thugs.
By 2003, it was time to launch a new plane. But Boeing's new board was reluctant to invest the billions needed.
The board made it clear that they wanted this plane made for less money. They wanted it made for $5 billion. They wanted partners to come in to pay the rest.
It's expensive. So how do you make that happen? Well, you promise them that you can do it for less, and then worry about the consequences later.
Boeing came up with a plan to save itself money. It would push the costs onto its major suppliers. Boeing would call them partners, and they would design and pay for the parts they built. Boeing's job would be to assemble the plane.
It was almost as if at times you thought Boeing executives believed, well, maybe they could sit in Chicago and have other companies do things, and they would just rake in the money somehow by putting it all together and putting a Boeing sticker on it at the end.
Right on schedule, Boeing rolled out the Dreamliner on Sunday, July the 8th, 2007. 787.
The airlines with us today have made a big commitment to Boeing and to this airplane. So far, they have ordered 677 of them.
I think in a lot of ways, July 8, 2007 was one of the more magical moments I've seen in the industry.
Watching us live around the world, broadcasting, I'm told, in 45 countries in 9 languages for the premiere of this very exciting new Boeing 787 Dreamliner.
We were all inside the factory with artificial lighting, big stage, Tom Brokaw, huge screens. Then they opened the doors of this giant assembly bay,
and in rolls this beautiful, beautiful aircraft.
And there it is sitting in the sun, and we all stream outside and we all touch it. And none of us notice.
And I'm reassured by all the executives involved that it's going to fly within 2 months.
1, 2, 3.
What I realized walking around it is that you could, look up in the wheel well and you could see daylight.
We learned that the whole thing was a sham.
Beautiful, isn't it? Absolutely beautiful.
They roll out this fake airplane.
I realized the doors were made of plywood.
This plane that we were admiring was completely a shell inside.
None of this would be possible, of course, without exceptional leadership.
There's only two conclusions you can draw. You have executives there who are either lying, in which case they're clueless because they're going to get caught in 2 months, or you have a complete disconnect between the people who are working on the plane, the engineers, and the executives who are saying this.
And so to each and every member of the 787 global team, I say thank you, congratulations, and keep up the great work.
More than any other single event, it was the big lie, and it was a statement that the Boeing company is now all about the big lie.
The day after the rollout, Wall Street pushed Boeing's stock to a 10-year high. But it was all about to unravel, as revealed in Boeing's investor calls.
Welcome to our quarterly update on the 787 program.
September 2007, Boeing announces its first delay.
It's not a failure how the airplane goes together. It's just a really complicated puzzle.
October 2007, the 3-month delay becomes 6 months.
We wish we didn't have to do this. New kinds of innovation present challenges, and we're doing our best to meet them.
October 2009, 6 months becomes 2 years of delays.
We know that we can and must do better, and I'm confident that despite our setbacks, we will get the 787 through the flight test program and into the hands of our customers.
It just kept getting worse and worse, and it seemed unbelievable. You have to understand, this was unprecedented. There'd never been a Boeing delay in a Boeing program.
The sequence of events looked an awful lot like a catastrophe rather than just a manageable series of delays.
The Dreamliner business strategy was backfiring. Designed to save so much money, it was costing Boeing billions.
The outsourcing plan failed very badly. All these different suppliers who were going to build these major sections couldn't actually do it.
To fix the Dreamliner, Boeing dispatched hundreds of quality inspectors to struggling suppliers around the globe, including to its partner Alenia in southern Italy.
We are just working through the final part of the process.
Alenia would take on the task of constructing the body of the plane, not with aluminium panels, but with composite plastic barrels. The main objective, to lose weight, saving fuel and making the 787 cheaper to run. But no one had ever made anything like this before. Not Boeing, and especially not Alenia.
There is nothing comparable with that on the market right now.
There's nothing built like this. Boeing's quality inspectors have one overriding priority: to make sure the job is done correctly. In 2009, when inspectors found flaws in parts made in this Alenia plant, they ordered work to stop. A year later, in Alenia's other factory, they again found serious problems, and again they ordered work to stop. But this time, managers overruled the quality inspectors. This internal Boeing document from 2010 reveals executives ordered Alenia to continue with fabrication without delay.
We followed at that time the procedure to stop, but with the help of Boeing specialists at the time, while we were in this approved condition, they took responsibility for approving the quality, and we will continue to work and engineer the time the product.
In this separate memo obtained by Al Jazeera, Boeing states that schedule may require deviations to the preferred quality process. We received the memos from an engineer who, like many we spoke with, was afraid to appear on camera, so he answered my questions by email. The quality engineer told us deviating from the process compromised safety. Alenia and Boeing said it did not.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
So I brought the memo to the former president of Boeing's Engineers Union.
So my name is Cynthia Cole, C-Y-N-T-H-I-A, last name C-O-L-E.
Cynthia Cole spent 32 years at the company, but never on the Dreamliner program. So she had never seen this memo before.
Wow. The program schedule may require deviation to the preferred process. See, that one sentence right there, that one fragment of the sentence, you know, you don't change your quality process for schedule. You make quality happen in the schedule. They're shortchanging the engineering process to meet a schedule, and they're not even allowing quality control to do their job. And they're telling them this is how it's going to be. I don't see how these people who write these things and agree to these things, you know, on the signatures down here, how they sleep at night. I just don't get it. You know, how can you do that? As an engineer, I find that reprehensible.
How does that make you feel as a flyer?
Oh, yeah, I'm not flying on a 787. That just makes, you know, because I've been kind of avoiding flying on a 787, and seeing this, I would definitely avoid flying on a 787.
In part 2, inside a Boeing 787 plant, workers reveal they fear to fly the plane they built. If the Dreamliner represents Boeing's future, then I've come to the place where that future will be built. In this assembly plant in Charleston, South Carolina. I've been called to a meeting with a man who works inside the plant. He's taking a huge risk, even talking to me.
It's been eating me alive to know what I know, and to have no avenue, no venue to say anything.
At his request, we used a different voice.
300 souls on the plane. Their lives, it's bigger than me.
We had seen reports of bad workmanship in the plant, but the man claimed the problems go far deeper.
With all the problems reported on the 787, there's 90% that's getting swept away, hushed up. It's an iceberg. The people that actually work on it are the biggest problem. There is an uneducated, underskilled, and uncaring staff that are building these planes, and I'm not the only one that feels that way.
And he was prepared to prove it. wearing a camera inside the plant to record what some workers said about the Dreamliner.
They hired these people off the street, dude, working, flipping burgers for a living, making sandwiches at Subway.
You can't have somebody from McDonald's do heart surgery. That's trusting someone with your life. That's what we're doing here.
The thing about it is they don't realize the seriousness of putting something together and putting it together right, because it breaks. It can't come over with the curve. It's going to come down.
I've seen a lot of things that should not go on at an airplane plant. People talking about doing drugs, looking for drugs.
It's all coke and painkillers and what's that other? You can get weed here. It's really good weed here.
Really? Like in the plant?
Yeah.
Like there's someone who has it right now. I could just walk up to them and just...
No, I don't know if they have it right. You got to place your order.
You got to place your order, right. I have never seen anybody or heard of anybody having to take a random urinalysis. As far as I know, random drug tests just don't happen.
They don't drug test nobody.
I know they don't.
And there's people who go out there and lunch to go smoke one up.
Do they?
Hell yeah.
You know for a fact.
Hell yeah.
When Boeing first announced the 787 back in 2003, nobody ever dreamt it would have been assembled anywhere but Washington State. The one place Boeing had always made its commercial aircraft. But new Boeing was playing by new rules, so it did something it had never done before. Auctioned off final assembly to the highest bidder.
They were going to hold a competition for it. A state against state, nationwide competition, where to build this plane. I ran to my editor after I put the phone down. I think it was 5 o'clock. And I said, well, you're not going to believe this. They're not necessarily going to build it here.
Washington State won, but only by giving Boeing what was then a record $3 billion in tax breaks. 5 years later, Boeing's machinists walked off the job after contract negotiations stalled. The strike cost Boeing billions and added to the Dreamliner's delays. Boeing stock was in freefall amid a global economic crisis.
That strike really enraged the top executives at Boeing. And so early in 2009, they made it very clear that they wanted a second assembly line somewhere else.
That turned out to be South Carolina. The state offered cheap land and labor. Close to $1 billion in support and no unions.
The decision to build the second 787 assembly line in Charleston, South Carolina, was made because of the strike in 2008. They wanted to do it there because they wanted to weaken the union. And they did.
Kind of has a shameless feel to it, right? It's very manipulative and not very hometown. It's not the way you treat your people in your community, unless they're not in your community, and unless you see them as a source of gains to be extracted.
But for Boeing, leaving behind a world-class union workforce for the greener pastures of a non-union Charleston would come at a price. Work in the plant is significantly behind schedule and plagued by production errors.
I know of one customer, they'll no longer accept planes from Charleston due to quality issues. They will only accept final assembly done in Everett, Washington. Every day when you go to work, not only are you doing your job, but you're looking at the previous job to see if someone has messed something else up on that and chose not to tell anyone.
That machine malfunctioning there, there's holes up, okay? They just went ahead and filled it. But I've gone ahead and told managers that, and nothing has been done. Nothing.
To be sure everything is done correctly and the plane is safe, Boeing has quality assurance inspectors painstakingly check every step of the work. But in South Carolina, this inspector says he only signs off on finished jobs.
Here you'll do the whole job and we just final it. You know, and I'm supposed to verify, oh, you checked the hole, you did the sealant, you put in the fastener. I never saw all that. So I'm supposed to final it saying it's good. What a problem I have.
You think Everett's better?
I think Everett will do what's right and make the plane right. Because in the union, they have to. Here, everybody is being pushed to meet this regardless of quality.
Which do you think is the priority then, schedule or quality?
Schedule.
If it's a constant battle between quality and schedule, we found one casualty, hundreds of kilometers from South Carolina in Mississippi.
My name is John Woods. I'm an aerospace engineer. Worked for General Electric, Lockheed, Boeing.
John Woods spent a career in the highly specialized field of aerospace composites. Boeing hired Woods, knowing he had qualified psychiatric conditions. Attention deficit disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and mild depression. His job was to write instructions on how to repair parts damaged during the manufacturing process.
It's my job to make sure that that aircraft is safe.
Woods says when he tried to enforce quality standards in the South Carolina plant, he was berated by his bosses.
In a couple of meetings, there was a group of managers screaming at me to dumb down my work instruction, saying you have to remove requirements from your work instructions. It's going to take too much time.
Woods says he witnessed damaged parts being ignored, papered over, and hidden from view.
There's no doubt there's bad repairs going out the door on the 787 aircraft. I am worried that sooner or later there's going to be a structural failure on the fuselage.
Woods appealed to Boeing's Human Resources Department, claiming he was being harassed for doing his job. Instead of coming to his defense, Boeing managers put Woods under review. Weeks later, they fired him.
I'll never forget this. The day before I was terminated, I was telling my brother how proud I was to be working at Boeing. It's true. So instead of saying, thanks for doing a good job, because I thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, I had to leave in shame, really. I was embarrassed with my own family.
He still had not lost faith in the system. He turned to the FAA. filing a whistleblower complaint. The document alleged 7 serious violations in the South Carolina plant.
So I've gotten to the page where they reach their conclusions in their discussion, and what they found is of all the allegations, all but one of them they could not substantiate, and the one that they could substantiate, they asked Boeing to fix it. Boeing said, okay, we fixed it, and then they closed the investigation. And that's pretty much how they all go. I mean, I've seen this so many times.
Thank you.
Go ahead, take these out when you are. I just tell people when they call me up with information and they say, well, I have all this information about this dangerous situation. Should I blow the whistle? And I said, well, you know, not unless you have a private trust fund or another job to go to, because you'll have a problem earning a living.
I had to maximize all my credit cards to survive, to support the family. There was a lot less money for the kids, for college and everything else. And it shouldn't be this hard to do the right thing.
When we looked at Wood's FAA complaint, we noticed a familiar name: Ali Bahrami. He was the FAA's man in charge of the Dreamliner. In 2011, 3 years behind schedule, Boeing celebrated final approval for the 787 to fly. And it was Bahrami who signed the order.
Thanks also in recognition for Ali Bahrami, manager of the FAA's transport airplane director.
It was Bahrami who signed off on the Dreamliner batteries. And after 2 failed and the FAA grounded the Dreamliner, it was Bahrami who signed it back into the air. Shortly after that, he retired from the FAA. 2 weeks later, Bahrami was hired as vice president of the Aerospace Industries Association, which lobbies on behalf of Boeing. One of the first things he did was to appear before Congress to call for greater self-regulation for companies like Boeing.
We urge the FAA to allow greater use of delegation, not only to take full advantage of industry expertise, but to increase the collaboration that improves aviation safety.
Mr. Bahrami declined our interview request.
One day you're regulating the airline, and the next day you're working for it. You can't possibly be tough on the industry that you're regulating, because you'll never get that plum job after you leave. The regulators at the FAA will rarely cross Boeing. They simply won't.
It's the Washington influence game, and Boeing is a master. Last year, the company had over 100 registered lobbyists. 78 of them were former government workers. 3 were former members of Congress. Boeing Chief Executive Jim McNerney is chairman of President Obama's Export Council. The president's former chief of staff came from Boeing's board, as did his second Commerce Secretary. As Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton helped broker a $3.7 billion sale of Boeing planes to a Russian airline. Even President Obama boasts that he works for Boeing.
So I tease Jay every time I see him. I said, I deserve a gold watch because I'm selling your stuff all the time.
Jay is Jim McNerney. It's clear what Boeing gets from the US government. What's not so clear is what it gives back.
Boeing paid no taxes in 2013, no federal income taxes. That's not a unique year. Over the last 12 years, they claimed over $1.6 billion in federal tax refunds, even though they reported $43 billion in U.S. profits.
$43 billion in profit, but none of that comes from the Dreamliner, which has cost billions and is years away from making money. All of Boeing's commercial profit comes from older aircraft, those created prior to the Dreamliner, prior to Jim McNerney, and prior to the merger. It has been the top executives and largest stockholders who have benefited most.
Boeing CEO Jim McNerney made $27.5 million in 2012. That was enough to pay the salaries of the President of the United States, the Vice President, the 15 Cabinet Secretaries, the 9 Supreme Court Justices, the 7 Joint Chiefs of Staff, and all 100 U.S. Senators.
McNerney is set to retire with a pension of close to $250,000 a month. Just before Christmas 2013, Boeing demanded pension cuts from its union machinists.
For Jim McNerney to be earning a pension at approximately $250,000 per month and think that it's okay for him to take my $2,200 a month pension is outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous.
Back in South Carolina, our unauthorized tour with Boeing's new workforce is coming to a close. There's only one question left to ask.
Would you fly on one?
No.
You won't fly on one. Would you fly on one of these planes? Would you fly on one of these
Probably not.
Would you fly one of these?
Yeah, it's sketchy.
Sketchy.
I probably would, but I mean, I'm having death wish too.
Our source asked 15 of his co-workers if they'd fly on the Dreamliner. 10 said no.
I wouldn't fly on one of these planes.
You wouldn't? Why wouldn't you?
Huh?
Why wouldn't you?
Because I see the quality going down around here.
Hi, Mr. Loftus, Will Jordan.
I'm sorry, Will?
Will Jordan. Workers who fear to fly the plane they build. Quality process apparently loosened to speed up schedule. Workers fired after making safety allegations. We needed answers from Boeing.
Right now, we're at a very exciting point in time. We have brought our production rates up to 10 airplanes a month, faster than any airplane in aviation history and to the highest level of any wide-body airplane in aviation history.
There's a couple of documents I want to show you here. I showed him the documents suggesting Boeing had changed quality procedures and overruled inspectors to speed up production. Mr. Loftus was not manager of the 787 program in 2010 when the memos were written.
Okay, I'm not familiar with this document. But...
Former Boeing engineers have told us that these represent Boeing essentially putting schedule ahead of quality, shortchanging the engineering process to meet a schedule. Is that something you recognize?
The number one focus that we have at Boeing is ensuring the continued safe airworthiness of an airplane, the integrity of the airplane, and the quality of the airplane going out.
We've also heard directly from workers inside your South Carolina plant. They paint a grim picture, really, of things there. They say the workforce isn't up to the job.
I'm extremely confident in the quality of the workforce in Boeing, South Carolina.
The Boeing workers at South Carolina don't share that confidence. Here's what some of them said.
Guys, I'm going to just call up hold here for a second. Can you turn the camera off for a second?
Why would we need to turn the camera off? What's the problem?
And then Boeing's communications director stopped the interview.
So who are these employees that you're speaking to in South Carolina that are making these points?
Obviously, I can't tell you who the employees are, but they are Boeing workers who assemble the planes that you build.
Well, I'm not sure it's appropriate here and now.
Well, I'm assuming the buck stops with the Boeing commercial airplanes management, and so the most senior managers are the ones to answer this. We're here with the head of the 787 program, and we have these things that you need to hear and you need to provide a response to.
We have not had a chance to review this or craft a proper response.
Larry, you're tired.
Larry, would you like to step back for a second?
Okay, but as I do, I have the highest degree of confidence in the production system we have with the employees we have at the Boeing Company and our supply chain. Okay, thanks.
Boeing answered our questions in writing, denying it compromises safety or quality. It said our interview was hostile, unprofessional, and in the worst traditions of tabloid-style television news. The company said it was confident that its battery fix prevents failures. Boeing says it uses one common FAA-approved quality system for the 787 in Everett and Charleston. Boeing noted its memo stated it did not signify authorization to ship parts that don't meet quality requirements. Boeing said it drug tests in line with company policy and applicable law. The company denies any customer has said they will only take planes from Everett. As for John Woods, Boeing says his safety claims have no merit. Toronto, May 18, 2014. Air Canada celebrates the delivery of its first 787. This is the modern marketing reality of the Dreamliner.
Today represents a huge milestone for Air Canada. We've been waiting a long time for this airplane. It's going to allow us to grow in unprecedented ways.
Because when you were eating before, where'd you put your iPad?
I think our passengers are going to be very receptive of some of the new amenities. So
I just want to see how far it goes back.
The windows are huge.
We were just excited because we really genuinely love this aircraft. And
thank you.
Anything else you want to add, or any other story?
No, we're very, very happy.
Yeah.
From a seating point of view, how is it different?
Are there more restrooms?
But is there another reality? One revealed by a burning battery, by the words of the workers who build the planes.
We're not building them to fly, we're building them to sell, you know what I'm saying?
By Boeing's apparent changes to its own quality protocol. Boeing says the 787 has no more problems than previous models. The FAA says there's never been a safer time to fly. The Dreamliner is the fastest-selling plane in the world. One day we may all find ourselves on board. When we do, we will trust Boeing has put quality first. We will trust the regulators have been rigorous. Ultimately, we will trust the plane is safe.